Thinking Out Loud Podcast. It's your boy J Lip. You already know what this is, and you know who I am. TOLPcast.com. Thinking Out Loud Podcast. We have a special guest in the building, a friend, a colleague, formerly of mine, and an overall good dude. His name is Andrew Justice. Andrew Justice, thank you for joining us this evening. How are you feeling?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me, Janon. That's quite the intro. I don't think even my mother would give me so many props.
So since we're doing the whole pseudonym thing, you can just call me Lip. I am J Lip. The whole Janon thing kind of crosses the wires. So
J Lip.
So
I didn't think about that. You're right.
No, it's all good, Rex. So anyway, with that being said, we're gonna edit both of those true names out. And moving forward, I want to, again, give you the appreciation for joining me on this platform. Man, it's been a long time coming. Over 100 episodes with the podcast, and we finally have someone who was brave enough and had the courage to have a conversation that isn't always the most comfortable, but yet it could be informative, and I want to make it as comfortable, I was going to say as uncomfortable as possible, as comfortable as possible, because you are a friend. I do appreciate you joining us. Besides that, is there anything that you want to say just to give an opener about yourself? Is there anything that you want to plug? I know you're a family man. I know you got a lot going on in the community. Anything that you want to share with the people that they should know about, that they can look for or try to reach out to?
Well, thank you for that opportunity. I would say that our focus now, my son and I, and more my son, has started a YouTube channel dedicated to his love of 3D printing. In fact, maybe in the background, you can hear one of his prints. And so I would just say that if anybody's interested out there in the listening world about 3D printing and how to do it, you can find out more about what we're working on by going to YouTube and searching for Zippy Cool It. That's Zippy, Zippy.
Wow.
COOLITT, two T's.
Shift it in front of your face because of the way we have the photo cropped. Zippy, we see Zippy Cool It, ITT?
That's right.
Okay. And then that's on YouTube, correct?
Correct.
3D printing. Now, 3D printing, for people who don't know, as far as I'm aware, is the printing of 3D resins that you can make into any type of figure, any type of design that you can imagine. You draw it up, and the 3D printer makes it. So,
yeah, I mean, my son can tell you 10 times as much about it as I can. In general, I think of it as tiny little Legos that this printer spits out and stacks together, and you can come up with cool things like this sign you just saw. We have a tiny Statue of Liberty. We have a tiny Eiffel Tower. We're printing little things right and left. In fact, his next video is going to be about a little device that we designed to help dry off shoes in the winter. So
right, I saw that online. So he's very innovative when it comes to the 3D printing. How did you get your son into that?
He actually started volunteering at COSI.
Okay, COSI, and that is the Science Museum in Columbus, Ohio, correct?
That's right, the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus, Ohio.
All right.
And in fact, if you want to see the tiny Eiffel Tower that he printed, here it is.
Oh, that's dope. Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously you can print tiny little gadgets and fun little things, but really we think that it's the future of technology. Not only can you print in resin, but they're actually starting to print things, human cells, food.
Ooh,
pretty soon they'll producing body parts.
Oh yeah, the robots are coming. Technology. Oh yeah, the robots are coming.
We, when the machines rise up and take over, we want to be on this side. So we're trying to get a head start.
Side with the symbiotes. All right.
Yeah, and just to finish the story, he started volunteering at COSI, and in COSI there's what they call the Tech Studio. All kinds of technologies are available, and one of the technologies, of course, is 3D printing. He got really, really good at it and borrowed some money, brought a printer, and now he's trying to, share his knowledge with the world through his YouTube channel.
That's a beautiful thing, man. Great father, great information to share about your son, man. And you were the catalyst to take him there and to get him interested. So he found his niche, You were the one who got him there, so congrats on that.
Thank you. I'm told that's what fathers do.
Yes, family is A1. Again, is it Andrew Jackson was the name?
Andrew Justice.
Andrew Justice, okay. All right, let me make sure I get that shit clear. All right. With that being said, Rex, I'm going to tell, or Andrew, I'm going to make sure that I make it clear again. We appreciate you joining us because this was actually supposed to be a bigger dialogue than what it is now, which I feel like is worked out for the best. You know, God works in mysterious ways. So,
amen, brother.
With that being said, we were supposed to have other guests, and unfortunately, there were people who did not feel as comfortable sharing their opinion or their views about the subject matter that we're going to go into. But the fact that you, again, are here to have that conversation, I cannot thank you enough. You actually get the, and I hate to say it in such a crude way, but you get the diversity award for the week. Because you are the most diverse guest that we've had on the podcast, meaning you're not black. So
I'm the token white guy.
Yes, and we will not, in respect of your position, we won't call you a token, but you are a Caucasian male, and
That's true.
I am a African American male. So we'll just keep it real because this is Thinking Out Loud, TOLPcast.com. You're a white man, I'm a black guy, and we're having a conversation, and we're still friends before and after. However, let's get to the shits. So, with that being said, we wanted to talk about the politics that are going on in the country right now. And I wanted to initially have conversations with you about how you felt about specific potential candidates. But I'm going to back that up, and I'm going to rewind that, and I'm going to say, you know what? Let's have a higher level, more macro. Is it macro or micro when you get higher?
Macro.
Let's get a macro level perspective on where you stand as far as your political views. So give the people a macro level of what you believe or what you support in this current climate in America right now. And real brief. This is not, we're not going down the punch list of I agree with Trump on this and I disagree with Obama on that, because that's the assumption because you're the white male. So go ahead and let us know what you think.
I would say that from the macro, it's probably sufficient just to say that I'm a God-fearing, gun-loving, staunch conservative. And with that in mind, I also try to keep an open mind and evaluate situations and policies, based on my core beliefs, not based on who supports what and what Trump said and what Obama said and what this guy said and what this lady said. I try to think about the important things in my life, such as God, country, family, friends, and see how those policies would impact them before making a decision.
Let me ask you a question then. My first one is, we talk about our affiliations with our religion. So we're both Christians, correct? So we're God-fearing, save Jesus, our Lord and Savior.
Amen.
How do you dissect that and then the statement of separation of church and state? Because to me, when I hear the separation of church and state, it almost feels like we're not supposed to allow our religious beliefs or our spiritual beliefs to impact how we feel about the state that we're living in and the state of the country. What do you think about that?
I think that that belief and that notion is used quite a bit to silence Christians or people of any faith, really, to use their faith as a basis for making policy decisions. And I think that when you know the history of where that statement came about and how it was applied, it really doesn't mean exactly the way people use it now. And so the phrase separation of church and state was actually used in a letter to the Danbury Baptists that I believe Thomas Jefferson wrote back when he was authoring the founding document. So the Declaration of Independence specifically, but I think even as the founding fathers were debating the Constitution.
Okay.
And the idea of the wall between separation, the wall that separates church and state, was that the state, in fact, should not be able to impose its will on the people. And I think that that's exactly opposite of the way we use it now. So people say, oh, I as an individual, me, Andrew Justice, I can't let my beliefs influence the state or influence the laws or how, we govern ourselves. But I think that when you look at our representative republic, our democracy, that doesn't make any sense, because I, as an individual, as a member of this society and this democracy, it's my responsibility to use my beliefs and my opinions in order to guide the country,
Okay.
to guide our government. And so this idea that I'm supposed to ignore the foundation of my beliefs and probably, the very core of my existence, my core as an individual, is ridiculous. And so when someone says to me, like, you as a Christian, because of separation of church and state, you're not allowed to use your faith as a basis for voting or policy making, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that the founding fathers and those who have governed since would find this statement and that use of the statement absolutely ridiculous. Now, before people start sending me hate mail, let me also say that...
Well, they can't send you hate mail because the mail would go to nowhere. The mail would go to the oblivion. It would go to Santa Claus. So, Andrew Justice, go ahead. Keep going.
So, but I think that statement, that notion, has also found its way back into the governance of our country, in the sense that government cannot uphold one religion over another, and I think that's fair, right? And so the benchmark test for me is to say, well, I might be okay as a Christian with the government doing this, but how cool would I be if a Muslim senator or a Hindu senator were to do the same thing, just supporting their religion?
Now, would that be something you would be okay with?
Well, I mean, that's just it. So when I consider policy and I consider, the mixing of church and state, that's how I try to address those types of policies, right? So you think about, for example, one common policy that's being discussed now is whether or not we should allow Bible classes in public school.
Okay.
And so me as an individual, I would say, as a Christian, like, I want my kids to learn the Bible, and, hey, that's great, let's do that. But I also wouldn't be so, and I'm cool. Let me say that I'm cool with that notion, as long as that Bible class is not used as an opportunity to convert students or to force Christianity on students, because I would be very upset if the public school mandated that my children take a class on Hinduism or Wiccan or Wicca or whatever, and the point of which being to turn them into witches or Muslims or whatever, right? So,
right.
And that, to me, that's what it comes down to. So the idea that we can't use our faith to assess policies and to vote for candidates is ridiculous. But I think that we have to be very careful, not to force our religion onto the state, because we're one generation away from some other group, whoever that may be, coming in and doing the exact thing that we don't want to do to us.
Yep.
So for me, when you say separation of church and state, I think that we as individuals, and especially as Christians, it's our duty to use our faith to evaluate and support or protest against policies. But as Americans, we have a responsibility not to force our religion on anyone else.
Okay. So when you talked initially about your viewpoints, you mentioned that you are a gun-toting...
I said gun.
Say it again?
Gun-loving.
Gun-loving, staunch conservative?
True.
Okay, so let's start off with the gun-loving. The gun-loving, I believe, historically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the amendments and the Constitution that were written to protect us with the right to bear arms was to protect us from a tyranny of a government to basically take over the people and say, look, we got the guns, you don't, so do what the hell we say, and if you don't, we'll kill you. Now, us as individuals, if we have the ability to tote the same weaponry, then we can defend ourselves. Am I correct in that assumption? Or at least loosely?
I would say that that's a pretty aggressive summary, but in general, yeah.
I'm
I
an
mean, the
aggressive
point was that,
person, so
yeah.
I'm going to jump to the extreme with it. So I guess the concern is, where do you draw the line when it comes to a lot of these initiatives that are saying, you know what, school A got shot up, school B got shot up, person C got shot up, people D got shot up, and people are saying, you know, we need to have more stringent gun laws. We need to do background checks on the criminally insane and this, that, and the third. No more gun sales at gun shows. Like, where do you stand when it comes to? Is there any opportunity that you feel like we have to improve our current memorandum when it comes to gun ownership? Do you believe? Well, let me let you answer that question first.
Okay. It's a very complex question, a lot of unpacking. Let me take a step back and explain
again,
the
we got
feeling
to
that I have.
let me again make it clear. Macro, not trying to dive
Right.
deep.
No, understood.
You know,
So I think from the macro that I think that it's an unfortunate reality that evil exists in our world. It's an unfortunate reality that there are evil people who want to do us harm.
right?
And for that reason, we as individuals need to have the ability to defend ourselves.
Correct.
And I think that it would be a wonderful world if guns and weapons and violence and evil didn't exist. All right.
Correct.
And I say that, and I'm sure that I'm going to upset a lot of my conservative friends, but that's the truth. I think that if there were a world with no guns, it would be better than the world that we have today.
Correct.
But this is the caveat.
Okay.
We do have guns. And so therefore it's important that the good people who want to protect themselves and their family and their friends
In their home,
society,
their property.
exactly, they need to have them because evil people have them.
Mm.
And so that's the foundation of my belief. It's not that I think that, every time a baby's born, we should hand them a gun.
But it's more of a response to the imminent threat that could occur.
Yeah, it's a response to the reality that people want to hurt us.
Yeah.
And the military, the president, the cops, no one has a legal or even a moral or ethical responsibility to protect me, Andrew, or me, my family, or the people I love, right? I have a biblical mandate as a father to protect my family. We have biblical and perhaps ethical mandates as friends and societies to protect each other. But in reality, there's no other line of defense. Now, I say that understanding that I believe that people are called into the public service of being a police officer, and I believe
Right.
that given the opportunity, most police officers will do everything in their power, including laying down their life, to protect society and perhaps even protect me as an individual.
Right.
But what's the old saying is that people want gods and guns out of society, but somebody threatens you or breaks into your house, the first thing you do is pray to God, and the second thing you do is call somebody with a gun.
Yeah.
And that's that's just that's the reality.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Um,
That's how I feel. And so I say gun loving is more of a joke, an inside joke, I guess, for you and for me, but
right.
that's the reality. Is that I support it reluctantly, knowing that the other option is not best. Now, obviously, there are things that we can do. There are things that we should do to protect innocent people. Right? We don't want crazy people to have guns.
Right.
We don't want mentally unstable people to have guns.
And let's be careful when we say crazy. I want to make sure that we say people who are unfit to wield a weapon. We just want to make sure we're clear on that, because sometimes crazy in this current climate can be politically incorrect. But this is thinking out loud, and this is where you share your opinion. And from what you said, it sounds like you agree that we do want to protect ourselves as a society from those individuals who can harm us without even knowing that they're harming us, because they have some type of mental disability. There could be some type of neuron disconnect within themselves. So, we get that piece. But it seems like whenever this goes up for discussion, it's always from my dead hands or from my dead cold hands, and everyone should have a gun no matter what their current state is. Do you or do you not agree that we should have better gun control when it comes to the background checks?
So here's what I would say is that, yes, in principle, I think everybody people of my political affiliation, people not of my political affiliation, want to make sure that the people unfit for gun ownership don't have guns.
Okay.
And so one vehicle in a theoretical world would be better background checks.
Right.
Now, I would also say that I think that the understanding of background checks and the gun show loophole is widely misunderstood.
Well, it's a huge loophole, because I myself went to a gun show, and when you go, if you have a firearm, they put, I believe, a zip tie around your ability to fire that firearm, and then you go and you buy. I cannot say that I purchased a weapon, but I can say that it did seem like it was a little bit of shim-sham going on when it came. I mean, I'm using the term because I don't know a better way to say. There were purchases that looked like they were being made with less and less paperwork. And I went to a gun show on the west side of Columbus at a shut down mall. So, you know,
I've been to that one.
Right. So the Westland Mall on the back of JCPenney had a gun show, and it seemed a little bit too easy as long as you had the cash to get a gun. And my concern is, where do we draw the line, or how do we help affect change in our current climate if we don't say, here are the rules, here are the bylaws that you have to abide by if you want to purchase a weapon as an individual consumer?
Okay. Well, so let me state, I'm not a lawyer, never played one on TV, didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express. So everything I'm about to say is my understanding. I could be totally wrong.
It's all your opinion. Thinking out loud. Andrew Justice, J Lip, let's go.
Ohio is one of the more, let's say, more liberal in its gun laws, meaning that it's easier to buy and sell.
You said the L word.
I did, and then I did that with loose gun laws. Isn't that funny?
Yep.
Yeah. So it tends to be a little easier to buy guns here. For example, we in Ohio, we don't have to register them. So, for example, hypothetically, I could find a cousin who wanted to sell a gun. I could give him the money for a gun, and he could hand me the gun, and that's it. Transaction's legal.
I did not know that. That's good to know. Okay. So I can holler at my cousin to get me down here, give me the gun, I can give him the cash, and then it's mine.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, I would say that my understanding is that the gun has to have a serial number, and if the serial number is filed off, that's a felony.
Well, sometimes it can get filed off on accident, but go ahead.
Well, and there's also sort of this implicit understanding that if the law enforcement were to ever suspect that gun was used in the commission of a crime, I need to turn it over to law enforcement, and I need to explain where I got it, and usually show some kind of proof that I wasn't the one who had it at the time.
That makes sense. Okay.
And so that to me.
So to you, are there any other additional gun laws? Because I want to keep it moving. Are there any additional laws on guns that you want to see as you said, a gun-loving, staunch conservative? Is there anything else we can do as a people? Go ahead. Yeah, so
I think that the parents need to be, or the gun owners, whether they're parents or not, need to be responsible for responsibly holding the gun.
Now, when you say parents, why do children have guns? Why would someone that has a parent?
I guess I meant, like, if you're a parent who owns guns, it's your responsibility to make sure that those guns are safe to store.
Because what's the lowest age that you can purchase a weapon?
I would assume 18, but
there's
no age to shoot one.
Right, but exactly that. And I've also heard that you can be younger than 18 to purchase a weapon as long as it's not a concealed weapon. So you can go to like a hunting store, Gander Mountain, get a shotgun at 16. Now, these are things I've heard. I don't know that either. I'm just asking the question, do you believe there should be a minimum age to be able to purchase a weapon?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think if you can't drive a car until you're 16, you certainly shouldn't be able to own and possess and be legally responsible for a gun.
Okay. All right.
And having said that, I think I should make it clear that I also think that parents who have children because they're parents and own guns have a responsibility to teach their children about gun safety, whether that means they take them out to a range and teach them to use the gun, or sit them down and say, look, guns are dangerous, don't mess with them, don't play with them, don't do anything. It doesn't, whatever. But I think that if you have kids and you have guns, it's your legal responsibility to have those conversations and to secure those weapons. And if they're not secured and somebody uses them in a crime, your kids or somebody else, I think that you should be held legally responsible.
Okay.
Exception being if somebody breaks in and jimmies the lock, or
Yep.
well, I mean that doesn't count. But
well,
if you just
but we get what you're saying. You're basically saying the accountability goes to the owner, which is the parent. So, Andrew Justice, we got to ask the question because I know the people gonna wonder: are you a gun owner?
Not sure I want to answer that, but
your name is Andrew Justice. So,
my standard response to that is break into my house at 3:00 in the morning, and you'll find out pretty quick.
Okay, so we'll take that as a yes. So you stand by what you're saying. You speak on what you know. We appreciate that honesty. I want to ask you, speaking on politics, and we're kind of getting to the crutch of the conversation here. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of backlash. I guess it's the best way to say it is there's backlash against our current president. You mm-hmm. are, from what I understand, you are not a person who is against emphatically the current president, correct?
What do you mean against emphatically? I would describe myself as a reluctant supporter.
Okay, so you're a reluctant supporter, meaning you're not emphatically against the president, meaning you're not within 100% of your being, looking for the impeachment of Trump. You're not looking for the no. You're not perpetrating the fraudulent behavior that he's done and saying that he should be out of office. Correct?
I don't think that there are any grounds to impeach him.
Okay. So that's
how I would.
Okay, so that's great. So now no, that's where I'm getting to. So okay. If that's how you feel, I want to know if you voted and agree with, and I'm assuming here because I'm not going to challenge your voting, that's your personal information. Mm-hmm. If you voted for Trump and you've seen what has transpired over the few years that he's been in office, mm-hmm. do you still find yourself a supporter? And you said a reluctant supporter. So I want to ask you, where does your reluctance come in? What's reluctant about continuing to support? So
here's what I would say is that you think about the 2016 elections.
Okay.
And the candidates who were in the field.
Okay.
He was not my first. He was not my second. Probably not even my fifth choice.
Damn. Okay.
In the end, came down to two, and of those two, he was reluctantly my first choice.
Okay. Or reluctantly your best choice, out of the two that you had. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's fair.
Yeah, and I get that. So with that being said, if you see that,
so I'm not again, he's not my first choice. If I could wave a wand and put somebody in the presidency, he's not the guy I would pick.
Of course, and we're not holding you accountable for that choice. So knowing that was a choice that had to be made, you made the best choice you knew how at that time. How do you feel now after all this time has transpired, all of the actions, all of the quote unquote accolades / all of the I don't even know the vocabulary word for the detrimental actions that have occurred. How do you feel as a supporter? Was it a good choice in your mind, or was it the best choice still, or was there something that we should have done as a culture, meaning the culture of America, that could have made a better choice?
Well, going back to the primaries, I think that our system of elections has a real problem, and that is that we tend to elect people based on who we think can beat other people.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the primaries, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And so, I think that, I think, wasn't it Rush Limbaugh who started Operation Chaos to get Obama put on the ballot? And that operation, basically, as I understand it, was that he encouraged all the Republicans to switch during the primary season and pick the worst Democrat candidate in the hopes that the Democrats wouldn't switch to the Republicans and pick the worst Republican candidate, and therefore it would be an easy victory for the best Republican against the worst Democrat.
That's a gem. That's a gem right there.
Well, and so I think that in theory that maybe could have worked, but I think that he was too clever by a half, because I believe that the Democrats did the same thing, and we as a society have done that now in probably 2 or 3 election cycles, where we kind of pick the person we want our primary our chosen candidate to run against in the election, right? So And I think a lot of that comes down to what I call the team politics, right? Where if I was raised a Republican or a Democrat all my life, and I know that I'm going to vote for the Republican or the Democrat, doesn't matter who the Democrat is, right? Because I'm going to vote for Republican.
Right.
And so I think there's a line of thought now where if I'm a true believer in my party, the best thing that I can do as an individual is try to get the worst of the opposing party on the ticket.
Oh yeah, you want an easy fight because you don't
Right.
want to make it the most difficult. You want to make it
Yeah.
an easy fight.
Right. And so, I mean, my personal opinion is that Trump was probably the worst possible Republican to put on the ticket, and Hillary was by far the worst possible Democrat to put on the ticket. And so then we as a society have to choose between the two of the worst, two bad options.
Okay.
Or I guess you choose the best of two bad options.
You
But
you
those
choose
options
the
are the
best
worst
of
of all
two
the good
worst.
options.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. I'm with you.
And so the right now I feel like in the grand scheme of things we are better off now with Trump than we would have been or we would be with Hillary. And so yeah, that's why I consider myself a reluctant supporter, is that in the end he's hasn't done everything that I wanted to do, and I think from a character standpoint it would be nice if he were a little more mature on Twitter and could do things a little bit differently. But you look at the economy and you look at a lot of the things that the president's elected to do, and he hasn't done a bad job in every area, right?
Okay.
And I remember having conversations right after the election where one of my cube mates was convinced that bombs were going to drop as soon as he took the oath of office. He was going to bomb somebody was going to bomb us. But North Korea, and I wouldn't call them an ally, but they're coming to the table. They're not rattling as many swords as they used to be. So that, I put that as a check in his column. One of the things that always bothered me is that we've been the world's police, right? Meaning we had to have the biggest, toughest, strongest, most expensive military because we protect 80% of the world. I mean, I'm making up a number. I have no idea what it is, but it's a lot.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I think that it's expensive. It's better than the alternative. I would rather have one ethical cop walking the beat than a bunch of actors who could do a lot of damage by themselves. And so I again in the grand scheme of things, I reluctantly support the idea of having a giant military if it means that we can maintain peace throughout the world. But my point is that with NATO, he's asking NATO to start paying their fair share of the military operations, and that when we're $22 trillion in debt, that helps.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe that, knowing that there's going to be a re-election campaign, do you still feel confident enough as a reluctant supporter with Trump and what he's accomplished to go against any Democratic candidate? Is that something that is a part of your staunchness, as you said, as a staunch conservative? Is there any opportunity that you could see yourself voting for a Democrat to oust Donald Trump?
I mean, in general, yeah. I mean, I couldn't give you a name, but
No,
anyone.
we're not doing names
yeah.
right now. We're just hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical. Yeah, I mean,
macro
so if there were a Democrat who supported a lot of the things that I support, and he did it in a more presidential way, and in a way,
or she,
true, then yeah, absolutely. So I would consider myself officially, I'm registered as an independent, but in terms of voting and policy, I'm a conservative, and so the way that shakes out is that every time there's an election or every time there's some kind of policy matter that we have to vote on, I always approach it from what's best for me, what's best for society, what's best for my kids. 90% of the time or whatever, that falls on the conservative side, the Republican side. But occasionally, I don't mind voting for Democrats. I mean, to me, I don't want to get caught up in this game playing or this idea that I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican and therefore I have to vote Republican.
Nice.
The funny thing to me is, I got a lot of friends and family who are Brown supporters, and I have no idea if this is true, but it seems like they also tend to be Democrats. And I wonder just what the correlation is. Is it, are they like, there's something about them politically, viscerally, that they consider themselves Browns fans, so they have to root for the Browns no matter how terrible they are, just like they consider themselves Democrats, so they have to root for the Democrats no matter how terrible the Democrats are.
You're absolutely right. And I feel that way too, coming from a Democratic family. Now, Andrew, this is the last question I'm going to ask you. Well, second to last. The first to the last is, will you join me again for a follow-up to this conversation? Because we need more time, but I have to cut it off only because for the sake of keeping people's attention who have low attention spans. Shout out to the audience. No disrespect to anybody out there who already fell asleep, but we are talking real shit right now. But I have to ask you this because it'd be a mistake on my part if I did not ask what is the toughest and the realest question at this point, which is, how do you feel as a white male in America hearing people ask candidates on the Democratic side what they plan to do about the black agenda? To me, it is basically a question that comes to candidates typically on the Democratic side saying, what do you plan to do to satiate or to satisfy that which is the disenfranchisement of black people in America, stemming all the way from pre-Jim Crow, slavery, the lack of what's the damn word? The lack of reparations. There's a lot of push at this point where I'm seeing candidates do interviews. So Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. I heard of another guy. Last name is I don't know what, because it's too early for me to care. But regardless, these candidates continuously get asked, what are you going to do for black America? What are you going to do for black agenda? What do you translate that to as a white male? Because I feel like that's what I want to do, is bridge the gap and understand. We never say, what are you going to do for the white agenda? What are you going to do for white America? Because white America is typically the dominant culture. And so I feel like there's kind of a crux there, because I do give credence to the fact that you did not partake in slavery. Your grandfather may not have even partaken in slavery. Your great-great-grandfather, you could be an immigrant from Ireland, if for all I know. You could. Well, I'm saying, for the sake of this conversation, to close this out, if you are not a direct beneficiary of the transatlantic slave trade that occurred, and beneficiary, just like someone would say, a beneficiary of the Holocaust that occurred, if you're not a direct beneficiary, what do you think about people asking for the amenities to be provided for black people in America? Do you think that that is something that's fair? Does it separate us? Does it continue to dissect us as two different type of Americans? Because you and I are on a split screen right now, where I'm a black man with, locks growing out of my hair, a hoodie on, I'm fitting every stereotype of a man who has probably been stereotyped. And then you are a white male with a very, you got your nice collar popping, you got the vest on looking sharp. And with that being said, but we're both friends, we're both cool, we know each other's families. So it's like we've been able to transcend the bull that society has tried to impose on us, but it's bigger than us at this point. Now it's on a level that I feel like is challenging these type of friendships, these type of relationships. And I know I'm going to catch hell from the people who listen, who know me, who are black, but I don't care, because this is my point, this is my opinion. So in closing, how do you feel when you hear people so concerned about what is a candidate going to do to represent black people? What are you going to do to give black people reparations? What are you going to do to get black men out of prison, get black people back on their feet, to provide for black people? What do you think about that? And what is your honest opinion on that?
That's a tough question. It's a good question. I would say that I've never quite heard it put in terms like that, like the black agenda. It makes it sound very nefarious.
And that's the term. It is the black agenda.
No,
Every interview.
As a rhetorical device, it makes sense. I get what you're saying.
And if I could give you a little example there was the LGBTQ agenda that occurred under President Obama. He lit the White House up in rainbow colors in solidarity with the LGBTQ community. There have been a lot of initiatives that have been started for the equality of the LGBTQ community. We know that the legalization of homosexual marriages has occurred. So there's been all of these things.
Yeah, sure.
But people are still saying, what are you going to do for black people? And how do you feel as a white male who interacts and knows and has empathy? I believe you have empathy for your black brothers, because at the end of the day, brothers in Christ, brothers in this world. What goes on in the white mind of that?
Yeah, in some ways you put me on the spot because I never really considered that.
Well, that's the point of thinking out loud. Is just what you think.
Hey, it worked. So I mean, again, starting from the macro and driving into the micro, I would say that in terms of identity politics, the statement that sticks with me the most is Ayn Rand's statement, and she said that the ultimate minority is the individual. And so that for me is how I try to view these types of policies and these types of questions of the different candidates. And so I guess my first thought is that, I mean, except for some very specific type policies or questions like reparations, for example, I think that Kennedy had it right when he said that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so the things that concern you are 90% the things that concern me, and the things that concern 90% of the things that concern the LGBT community are the things that concern me, right? So I want a strong economy, I want strong defense, I want justice, I want fairness in the sense that I don't think that anybody should go to jail because of the color of their skin, or that they should suffer any kind of violence or disadvantage in any way because of their skin or because whom they love. And I think that in general we're going to get a lot further if we ask what can we do for each other, what can we do for our society and our country. That's going to get us a lot further than talking about sort of the micro policies about that. Now I also think that I'm a fan of talking about all things, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's why you're here.
Yeah. And so I mean, if we want to have a discussion about reparations, great, let's do it.
We don't have time for that today.
No,
what I will say,
in general, so.
Yeah, what I will say is, in closing, because we will have that conversation in the future, but in closing, you do understand that there was a lot of black people who voted for President Obama because he was black and they were black. There was an alignment with the fact that they felt like it was challenging the status quo. We've had X amount of presidents who did not reflect the not only skin color but the culture of which we came from. So you have this, questionably, because he's mixed race, and I will give that credence. A lot of people say first black president. He, in my mind, is the first multiracial president. But if you say he's the first black president and, he liked basketball and he smoked Newports and, he had all these different aspects of him that black people associated with, but I don't think that really yields you being a great leader for a country. Oh, right. And in the same respect, if someone were to say, Trump just speaks his mind, I grabbed her by the private part and, I had Stormy Daniels and she was twerking on the thing and all that stuff, like at the end of the day,
you ever said that, but okay.
Well, I'm just saying, at the end of the day, I feel like we can't align ourselves with the worst of us, but we have to try to align ourselves with the best of us, and that's why I want to bridge this gap and have you on here to have the conversation, because I feel like you gave an honest and open opinion, and that's why I really appreciate the fact that you joined me, and I look forward.
Well, before we cut off though, let me respond to that, because I think a very important point is that the people I know, Republicans specifically, the conservatives, their opposition to Obama, the ones who did oppose to his presidency or being elected, had nothing to do with the skin color, right?
The ones that weren't racist. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean that's
Andrew.
Fine, but I don't think it's fair to just say that.
But my question, but not a question, but I want to make sure it's clear. You said that's fine. I feel like there are people that are like you who have a higher level of understanding of cultural divide and also cultural synergy. The whole statement of, those people exist, but they are out there. The Tiki Torchmen are out there. Like it's a reality we have to deal with. And I think that when I say we, but when I say we, I mean we as black people have to deal with. There is a certain anxiety that occurs still when being followed by a police car. There's still a certain sense of anxiety when we go into a store and a security person follows us. And I'm talking as a 32-year-old man. So with that being said, I think that everything that you're saying is relevant to you, but you almost, unfortunately, are kind of like an outlier from what the public shows us. So,
well, I mean, that's fair, but I would also say that every Republican I know would have been happy to vote for a black president if he or she supported conservative ideals. Right?
Okay.
I mean, so Condoleezza Rice, for example, was one name that was floated.
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. You know, a lot of people supported Ben Carson. I think that.
But you say a lot of people supported
his name was
no one made it though.
I'm sorry.
You said people supported them, but no one made it though, and I think that that's the biggest.
Well,
to me, the
Condoleezza
day that
didn't run, a lot of people tried to get her to run, but she didn't.
That's a good. Okay, so that's a good historical point, and that's again one of the reasons why you're here is because you bring the factual information. So one cannot say that there wasn't an attempt for a black person to run conservative. There was.
Herman Cain.
Yeah,
he was a major candidate. Got a lot of support.
Yeah. I guess at the end of the day,
it's.
At the end of the day,
I would say that the one of the hallmarks of a true conservative is that we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, and therefore the color of our skin is no bearing on our the love that we need to show for one another, the value that we have intrinsically as a human. And
but let's not imply that Democrats aren't brothers and sisters in Christ either.
No, but what I simply mean is that Democrats specifically seem to divide people based on their identity. And I think that conservatives, seeing everyone as a brother and a sister, don't care about that stuff. They say, okay, you know, who's going to be the best on taxes, and who's going to be the best on defense, and who's going to be the best on social issues.
Andrew,
by the way,
go ahead.
Trump, they got that law passed, right? The criminal justice reform. So that's
one point. One positive and multiple negatives don't equal a winning game. But with that being said,
we'll have to talk more about the negatives. I don't think there are as many as people think.
Well,
we always talk about generalities, but we never get to specifics.
And that's what we're going to do next episode. We talked macro this episode. We're going to go micro next episode. I got my man Andrew Justice in the building. It's your boy J Lip. Catch me on Instagram at IamJLip. Catch Andrew Justice in the atmosphere if you can, because you won't find them on social media anywhere. And with that being said, this is Thinking Out Loud. Thank you, Andrew, for joining. I appreciated this conversation. Was very insightful, and it was a lot more comfortable and a lot more dynamic than what I had expected. But because of who you are, I appreciate and welcome you back as soon as I can. We can only do one episode a week though, so this will be up live, and then we'll go from there. In the meantime, please keep sharing the good news. Please keep spreading the word of God, and continue to live in what I consider to be the brotherhood of Christ, because the world needs it. That's how I feel, and nothing can change that. And with that being said, I am J Lip. This is Andrew Justice, Thinking Out Loud Podcast, TOLPcast.com, and we are out.